Listen to your heart. It's one of those slogans of New Age spirituality, isn't it? When you're not sure what to do, when you're not sure what next steps to take, listen to your heart. Follow your heart because your heart never lies. But what if it does? In this video, I'm going to look at the hidden dangers of heeding this New Age spiritual advice of listening to your heart. So stay tuned. Hi there, I'm Lisa Ingalls-Witter, and welcome to my channel where I help spiritual seekers just like you to get non-New Agey answers to deep spiritual questions. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos every week, and also be sure to hit that little notification button as well, because then you'll get notified when I put out new videos. So let's dive into the topic of this video, which I think is really important. And we're going to be talking about the hidden dangers of that really common and seemingly innocent advice of listen to your heart. I mean, it seems like no big deal, right? Listen to your heart. But let's begin with this conversation with a distinction. And that distinction is the difference between the mental emotional heart, sometimes called the heart mind in yoga, and we're going to make that distinction, call that the small heart with a small h, and then the non-emotional intuitive faculty of consciousness heart, which we'll call heart with a capital H. And so let's dig in first to this idea or this concept of the heart mind. And most people are pretty familiar or have heard that term before, the heart mind. Generally speaking, Westerners make this distinction between the head and the heart. You probably have yourself as well, if not read books about the heart and the mind and the difference between the two. So there's always this sort of a separation between head and heart, or mind and emotions in the Western world. And we think of them, generally speaking, as separate things. But in yoga tradition, it's really interesting because they think of the mind and the heart as two names for the exact same thing, but that they're just on these two different ends of a vibrational spectrum. So in yoga, it's called chitta. It's spelled C-I-T-T-A, chitta, or if that was translated roughly speaking, it would mean heart, mind, stuff. And the difference between thoughts and feelings, or thoughts and emotion, or the head and the heart in yoga tradition is that thoughts simply have vibrations with more of a language or linguistic component, and emotions have vibrations with less of that language or linguistic component and more of an affective component to them. But they're essentially on a spectrum of vibration, and they're not different from each other. They're just two ends of the same spectrum. Now, it's very interesting because at one point in time, Westerners really valued rational thinking and the intellect, but it's been in more recent times where Westerners have really come to value emotions over thinking. How many of you are familiar with the term emotional intelligence, as if you don't have emotional intelligence, you know, there's something wrong with you, or you're out of touch with reality, out of touch with your emotions. And that, I'm not saying that that's not true, but we have in the Western world started to vilify reason and intellect over feelings. And what we have come to see, the danger in this is that it's become part of this post-truth era that we live in right now, where feelings tend to be more important than rational thinking and the objective truth. Feelings trump the truth, right? Pun was intended there. So it's interesting because in yoga tradition, they value both the mind or thinking and feeling or emotions. And in yoga, it's encouraged to live a life in balance between these two qualities of thinking and feeling. And if you really think about it for a moment, thoughts and emotions are inseparable and interdependent. When you think a thought, an emotion arises. Or when an emotion arises, you can trace that emotion back to the thought that preceded it. So it's just a matter of what end of the spectrum you tend to be on. In all of my years of working with clients, often I actually get clients, when I ask them what they're feeling, they tell me a thought versus a feeling. And so even when people think that they're in touch with their feelings, they're actually thinking more than they're feeling. It's not good or bad. It's just a thing to notice that we need both thoughts and feelings, and that they're inseparable and interdependent, as yoga tradition tells us, even though in the Western world and in Western psychology, we've sort of separated those two. Now, let's get to sort of our topic here, which is when people in alternative spirituality scene, or in the New Age spirituality scene, make this statement, listen to your heart or follow your heart, they're more often than not giving more value to the emotional end of that spectrum than the thinking end of the spectrum. So the danger then, as I've already said, is that we begin to get into this trap of the post-truth era, like we're in right now, which is this trap where we equate feelings with the truth. So without balancing our feelings and doing this inner work of self-reflection and integrating that feeling component of a thought and the thought component of a feeling, then your perception of what's really happening in the world, your perception of the situations, circumstances, and events that present themselves to you in your life are distorted. So that's the piece of listening to your heart that can be very dangerous. If when you're saying listen to your heart, you're actually speaking to listen to your emotions. So let's move to this other side of things that yoga tradition talks about, which is listening to your heart. They're really talking about this non-emotional, intuitive faculty of consciousness. And I think that that's actually what a lot of spiritual seekers think that they're talking about. They're talking about, what is my intuition, when really what they're tapping into is their emotion, and they're not making the distinction between this non-emotional intuitive faculty of consciousness and just an emotion, or a thought and an emotion. Now in yoga tradition, this non-emotional intuitive faculty of consciousness is called pratibha. And I just put that name out there for those of, or that word out there for those of you who might be interested. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to be speaking about it in terms of the heart with a capital H, because that's what we really want to be listening to, is our heart with a capital H, that non-intuitive faculty of consciousness. And I repeat that over and over just to pound it into your consciousness, right? So what is the heart, this non-emotional intuitive faculty of consciousness? Well, it's an inner wisdom and knowing that is beyond your emotion and thinking. So our intellect, our emotion, our thinking is absolutely critical and important on the path. We don't want to dismiss it. We need it. However, our heart is this inner wisdom and knowing that is beyond, it transcends the emotion and the thinking. We don't want to bypass. We don't want to do any spiritual bypassing of the emotion and the thinking, but we do want to transcend it if we want to really touch in to that intuitive place. So in yoga tradition, the pratibha, which we're calling the heart here, it transcends the intellect because it comes from beyond our limited egoic aspect of the self. So that's really key. How do we make this distinction between our heart with a capital H and our heart with a small h? Well, what we can say and what we know is that our heart with a capital H is not self-centered. It's not egoic. So its wisdom won't necessarily lead you towards something that you like, because its concern is for the benefit of all beings, not just you. So I want to repeat that again, because sometimes when we can delude ourselves, we can deceive ourselves and think, oh, my heart is saying that I need to do this because it's going to be the best thing for me. Well, again, I want to emphasize that pratibha, heart with a capital H, is not concerned about you. It's concerned about the benefit of all beings. So sometimes the direction that it leads you in might not be something that you actually like. It might challenge you. It might not feel good. It's not to say that that's true all the time, but sometimes it might be. And often it can be felt as this quiet, steady pull, either towards or away from someone or some situation, circumstance, or event. So it's this quiet steadiness, not, on the other hand, the heart with the small h, the emotional heart, the heart-mind stuff, tends to be more impulsive, more compulsive, more judgmental. It justifies itself. It defends itself. Like, I need to do this because XYZ. I should do this because XYZ. So it's bound by an egoic conditioning of who you think you are, but not who you really are. So that's the distinction between your heart with a capital H and your heart with a small h, and listening to your heart. So let's wrap up this discussion. So the only way to truly access the heart, the capital H heart, is through regular spiritual practice. Over time, you're going to be able to make that distinction between the heart with a small h and the heart with a capital H. You will be able to make that distinction, but it does take practice in doing it. And it's really clear to anyone who puts in the time to cultivate this practice of connecting to the pratibha, or the heart with a capital H. It's a very clear distinction, but it really does take discernment. And the first step in discernment is to make these distinctions that we've just made right here. So I invite you to go back and re-listen to what those distinctions are, so you can begin to evaluate for yourself, so that you can begin to be discerning for yourself. Are you really listening to your heart with a capital H? Or are you listening to your heart with a small h? All right, so it is time for question of the day. How do you tell the difference between listening to your heart with a small h or your heart with a capital H? Go ahead and leave your response in the comment section below. I'd love to have a discussion with you on this. And if you want more topics, or if you're interested in getting something else answered, please do let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to make a video on that for you. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching it, please do click the like video, and remember to comment below and click on that notifications icon so that you get notified of any new videos that I post, which I do post about every week. And that's it for this video. So thanks so much once again, and namaste.